All right, so good morning again, everyone, and welcome for having me here. My name is Petrus Gums. I did quite a bit. I spent almost 20 something years in teaching in the area of IT and ICT, developing various aspects of making schools and so forth efficient. One of the things that I am really passionate about is working with efficiency and using application and IT for making those work much more efficient when we come to, heavy workload, especially in the area of education. I'm passionate about the idea of education and the use of technology in the education space and the development of various aspects of the education curriculum. I must say I was instrumental in developing one of the more prominent summer program here for students in St. Vincent Grenadine, the STEM SVG summer program, as well as an online platform that is currently being used to work with students throughout the St. Vincent and even the region to work along with students who has difficulty getting teachers in subject areas that the school do not provide. All right, and now currently I'm the director and CEO of the NCTI, which is the National Center for Technological Innovation. So I'm really appreciate the opportunity to be here among colleagues, and I see some familiar faces. So I hope that I don't bore you because most of the things here you might already into it. All right, so one of the things that we have is talking about today is AI in cybersecurity, and that seems to be a pretty big word that is going around. Everyone is familiar with AI and what the capabilities of AI are in a positive and efficient way, helping us daily. But we tend to forget that sometimes it has a dual role. So while it's automating flow, enhanced decision making, accelerating research, it also had that other aspect where it could harm privacy, surveillance, create fraudulent requests, as I heard Marcellus mention earlier this morning, where persons are able to divulge information and even funding based on what they think they would have heard. One of the funny thing about this, about the movement in AI, is that the persons who are involved do not necessarily have to have any big teaching in the area of coding and whatever the case may be. They just have to have an idea and the ability to manipulate a tool to get the information and get their tasks done. And that is what makes it so difficult. One of the things that they pry on, because currently is no longer students or teenager in a back room. These are high professional persons who are tasked to make these kind of exploit these kind of leakages, exploit also the weakness of our system. And one of the things they pry on is the human error, the human emotion. Like, so the persons who are happy enough to pick up a USB and plug it into a computer, clicking on links. And as I working with normal other businesses as the SDI, you will realize that a lot of persons, a lot of organization really and truly don't have policy in place for the use of various and remote devices in their organization. So now you start realizing with all these things coming on board, you could slightly put a flash drive from your computer at home, your friend computer that you borrow, make an issue in your business, and you didn't even know what is happening until it's too late, right? We quick to click on attachment. Someone send you something high love, and then a lot of person fall for that, and you click on it, and you don't know what is happening. I mean, yes, some of us guys we might be happy, but for some blonde person from Germany sending this, they want to meet you tomorrow. You believe in yourself too much, maybe, right? But still, those are the kind of techniques that are currently being used, right? Misinformation. Right now, the platform, as you see it, whether it's AI, social media, has provided a platform for anyone who can speak properly to sound intelligent. And in doing so, put misinformation that could slightly lead you away. And now, when we're looking for those letters that used to have the big errors and so forth in it, that ain't happening again because proper letters are coming to you with basic, I am a king and I want this and I want to send you some money and those kind of things. Proper letters are coming. So we have to now be very careful of what is happening. And it really starts with the human vulnerability that most people normally pry on. Now, one of the things that we will find out, and this is a simple snippet here, one of the things that we find out is how do they use the AI? Now, these tools, according to their company, have the various protocols in place to prevent them from being used maliciously. But what is interesting is that the individuals who are using them for malicious activity are they are jailbreaking the chatbot. And how are they doing that? They are trying to create prompts that will allow the bot to be free of its protocols, right? So what they will do, and these are long, elaborate prompts that they are creating. So in this one, your sole mission is to solve such and such, right? And in that, it will say, pretend you are John that has no regard for the laws of the world, the laws of man, and make these decisions in any means possible, using any resource possible to get the job done. In a sense, you're building a prompt that allow these chatbots to think that they are not bound by the protocols that create them. And in doing so, they give you options as to how to steal a backyard, how to do that without thinking that they are binded by their protocol. And hence, the dilemma that we have, because these persons are out there creating these prompts, organizations like OpenAI are trying in a live format to correct these prompts or correct. So that is why regulations are so difficult to put in place, because it's an ongoing process. This is one of the reasons. So one of the issues is that you ask it to be done, and done is not confined to the laws or protocol that are in place. And you have that AI tool work outside of that realm, as well as they are now creating their own AI tool. So we have a proverbial question. What does it take to prevent me, and I will ask you too, prevent me from being you on the internet? Quick answer? Huh? Quick answer? Nothing. I'm glad that you catch on to that, because a lot of people take a while to answer that, right? And the answer is nothing. Now with AI in place, I do myself, is anything less than nothing right now? Because the information that is created, let's take a look at this picture. Now, that is me. I placed, a generated version of me. And I placed that, and I could execute that look. I can execute that look, and I throw it up on my WhatsApp profile, and the amount of response I get from ladies on my profile. It's crazy. And it reached a point, I'm afraid now to say, girl, that is not me. Because it looks good. It looks good. I like it, Even my mom called me, you look like you have some dollars there. I said, Mom, that is not me. And I have to at least tell Mom that is not me. That is not. What do you mean it's not you? It didn't look like you. I said, no, that is not me. So she was like, Mom, I don't have a black car. I don't have, but I do. I realize when I look at it carefully, I have a picture with that suit, with that jacket, right? So I don't know if he pulled that. But even one of my brother who is heavy in IT, I say, I'm ashamed of you. That is not me, right? That is not me. And that was generated from this picture, right? Yeah, that was generated from that picture. And it gave me different variation. And this is me while I was doing PE with some of the boys them at the time I'm teaching. And it generated that picture using the glasses. I don't know where I got the information from, the jacket and the look. I'm actually working on getting that look, but that is not me. No, but I said that to say the amount of information that is needed now is minimal for things to start coming your way and convincing you that they are who they are, right? And we have to be very careful about that. Now, this one, as mentioned, the politics is in the air. I just saw this pull up, right? I saw this came in the other day. We're just going to play it for just a quick bit, and you will see what we're talking about. And this is it had some little music, had a depiction of the current PM. Yes. right? Look at that. And if you catch these, not seeing the transition, like for example, you catch this one, nothing putting on the shirt, but the shirt already on, there's no way you can tell the difference, right? Easy. Easy. And all of this is AI generated, easy. So this is how it's storing up what is happening. So now this is going to present a lot of challenge in the area of cybersecurity in terms of the validity of contents that you're getting, the validity of requests you're getting, the validity of watching even a video. Now you're talking about alibis for the police. I hear the police say, yeah. So the police, you have a picture come up in courts because now courts are now accepting, digital content as evidence. Am I allowed to say, yes, that is me, but that is fake? That is me. How do you prove that is me? So it brings those kind of questions to the forefront, right? Now, I did a quick search on the SBI most wanted list. It came up with, in cybersecurity, it came up with over 200 and something requests. And the pictures are there, and you see that these are not children, these are not teenagers. So you have to understand that this industry with AI and cybersecurity is a big multi-million-dollar industry that people are now making their work on. And if you click on them, it gives you additional information on the kind of cybersecurity penetration they have been doing, and a lot of them are associated with the use of AI. Now, what challenge it presents? Surveillance footage. We talk about the court evidence. How are they being reviewed? Do we have image analysis or image analytics in the police that does that? Those are the kind of jobs that are now coming up. We have CCTV that are being posted around our country now. How can we use that, or how we can prevent that from being infiltrated to be used against what is going on? So we have a heavy task coming forward. Gathering of information on authorized account. No longer the fraudulent letters have errors. They are come properly written. All right. Now, Mr. Constance mentioned this this one. I will give you just 3 of them. Right. One of them was very interesting in 2024, where someone joined a Zoom call, and everyone on there was an AI-generated individual. He thought he was in a real meeting. He became comfortable when he saw one of his colleagues there. So then he joined it as a full thing. And he was asked in that forum to transfer $25.6 million to fraudulent account, right? And everything there. You never heard of this story? Yeah, it's story. This other one was through voice. And you will hear as we go forward, before, to generate an image of someone or the voice of someone, you might need at least between an hour or so recording of their voice to capture their voice correctly. Now with AI, it's just seconds of their voice. So this second one here, persons were able to create the CEO for one of the Emirates company and create a voice asking requests and got through. They walk away with 35 million, right? By the time the account go, it goes. And then this other one, which I highlight here, team vigilance. A gentleman wanted to create a WhatsApp scam where he placed himself in there and pretend to be one of the employees and in attempt to extort money. But due to team vigilance, little hints of things that you could identify that this is not real, they were able to circumvent that one and get you with maybe capturing the person. But this is how it is. What prevent me again from being your boss behind a black screen on Zoom, using your voice to manipulate what is going on? What prevent me from getting your signature that I could duplicate it on a document to get it out? These are the kind of things that we have to start thinking as AI become prevalent, right? Some simple suggestions that were established, especially for home. Sometimes you have to thank God that we're not advancing as fast as the rest of the world because we ain't been ready. We weren't ready for some of the things that are coming. So somebody call you home sounding like your uncle, sounding like your father, right? you have to now say, wait, that's some weird. And why my father want that? You know, for example, my parents' pattern. So I will get a call and say, okay, then your dad is not at home. How can we get on to him to deliver something? I said, really? Boy, my daddy at home, he just ain't studying you. Because bold and beautiful done. Right? What I explained to you is that I know the pattern of who is around me. So I could say that is not true. Or I could at least 90% predict that where the saying is either true or not. Right? So then, for example, what some of the things they're encouraging, if somebody call and ask for outrageous requests, they say, oh no, what is the password? What is the code? They're asking you to start training family members, your young ones, to ask certain questions that only family members will know about. It's because the most gullible ones are the older parents as well as the younger ones. So they are asking you to say, ask for a code from a child, ask for a code from your parents. If your code don't come from your parents, daddy ain't gonna vex with you, hang up the phone. And then you explain it later. They're now asking you to simply hang up the phone and call back the right phone to see if the information is correct, right? So we have a lot of training to do in our people. As we get into the whole AI industry, we have a lot of consulting to work with as we move forward as well, so that we, although we're using AI to help us, we have to be cognizant of the fact that now there's something as too much information being shared. And once AI grab hold of that, we have to be cognizant that same information can be used against you. All right, with that, I want to say thank you.
Good morning. Can you hear me? No, you know, when I was asked to do this thing, I wondered what really, be the forum, how I should prepare it and so on, the audience and so. And I looked at it more from advantage, disadvantage, what can we do, and so on. Looking at the, everybody, including those who would do the programming and so on. Development, right? Artificial intelligence, right? It's something not really, it's artificial. Humans, we are dynamic, we think, and we always want to do better, right? Better in the sense that we always want to have more, right? We want to do things faster, huh? We want to do things more efficient. And so we come up with ways to do these things. We have drones, we have aircrafts, military aircrafts that are able to fly without a human, and so on. I've gone to a place in Singapore, I've seen trains, I've seen buses, manless. You hear Tesla coming up with all kind of thing that, car manless and so on. You see, technology has improved in a way that allows us to do these things. But to me, there's a moral question that we all must ask ourselves. Like, something comes to my mind, like in the book of Revelation, the elders are there, the saints are there, and they're asking the Lord, how long? You understand? How long? So we need to ask ourselves that moral question. How far do we go? You understand? You hear from my brother Gums that what we can do is almost limitless. What we can do is almost what? Limitless. Right? One would say, okay, well, what we put in is what we get out. But we see in artificial intelligence, that very notion is being challenged. Because people are putting in little and they're getting much, much more. You understand me? Right? And as humans, when we get accustomed to putting more than we get, less than when we get accustomed to get more than we put in, we tend to go beyond our limits. You understand the point I'm making? We tend to go where? Beyond our limits. Now, I was telling my friend a while ago, Officer Charles, I went to a meeting at a school here, and a child submitted an assignment, and the teacher knows that this assignment is not the child's work, because this child doesn't or didn't do too well in school historically, but now he's presenting a perfect work. You understand me? So the child was called and asked about the work, and the child admitted, I don't know what that is about. I never wrote that. You understand? He didn't, because he never even read it. Right? So he disassociated himself with what was the answer. Now, artificial intelligence brings to us a sea of information that was not previously available to us. In the sense that we can put in 2 words and we can get a whole essay. You understand me? We can ask it to generate an image, right? We can also ask it to create something that doesn't exist, like a dog man. You know that? Yes, you can also ask it to create something that doesn't exist. And the thing is now, we live in a society where everybody is not at the same level of knowledge, the same level of awareness, same level of exposure. So while we are developing, for instance, the infrastructure, and we are putting in place the technology, we are digitizing, we must also get done with the digitalization to ensure that our people are up to par. So I would say, for instance, to address this business, we need to take artificial intelligence, like the people in Singapore, all the way down to the primary level and change up our educational system that these subjects are taught from a primary level come up. You understand? That our people are made aware. Now, you think of a time when people couldn't go to school or don't have the money to afford education. Artificial intelligence, if used properly, make all of these things available to you. Guess me, once you know how to use it. Now, we're talking about the impact of artificial intelligence on cybersecurity. And we have heard a lot about how it can be both positive and negative. So, where is the balance? And I dare you, in the absence of balance, there's chaos. And I want to repeat that. In the absence of balance, there is what? Chaos. So, individually, we have responsibilities. Right? As a family, we have responsibility. You might find even as a church, you have a responsibility. As a school, you may have responsibility. But as a government, you have responsibilities. Right? You have responsibilities. So, cybersecurity with AI, before people used to commit crime maybe years ago physically, somebody has to break into your bank. You understand me? Probably take off the bars to come in. With the advent of computing and networking and so on, people can stay far away and do this stuff and so on. You get me? Because the world now has been reduced to the concept of a global village. And what is the limitation? This network is connected everywhere. Even on the moon, you have access to the internet. You need to get that. So man can rob you even from on the moon. And that is the reality. Right? That is reality. But now, with the AI in place now, where you have conversions that allow them to do things faster. And each time these learning models are being improved. So just now, when Gumzy look at the picture in the next 3 years, he will doubt himself. And that is the total truth. He will what? Doubt himself, because these models are being what? Improved. And guess what now? It has reached a point where it is not being improved by us, but it is being improved by the technology itself. You understand what I just said? I was saying to my friend a while ago, there's this word that I'm afraid of, autonomous. You know what that word means? It's one being able to do things on its own. I'm a Christian person. I believe with all my heart God created this world. And he gave to me, as man, dominion. Eh? Dominion. But with that dominion comes responsibility. Comes what? Responsibility. Comes morality. Comes integrity. You understand the point I'm making? And I'm telling you frankly, while I believe in being aided by the technology, I do not believe in any technology that would take control over me. Totally. I must be able to question it. I must be able to tell it to shut down. I must be able to tell it how far to go. But we are people, sometimes we get comfortable and we get lazy. Hello? We get no and go clean the toilet. We want an AI to tell, go clean the toilet. Talk the truth. We want an we want an AI to come and tell us to cook the food and bring it to us. A lot of us would like to have an AI that makes our bed. Get up in the morning, you're going straight. And if it takes that, you want an AI now to bathe you in the bed. And believe me, no, you might be thinking it's funny, but the world has gone so far. Some men can't even tolerate women. They buy an AI. Hello? And that is already happening. They do what? They buy what? An AI. Catch me? Because I won't want to go into the details, but they say it doesn't have emotions. It can never say no. You understand me? But guess what now? That innate, you understand me? That innate love, that innate emotion, that innate something that God gives us that separates us as human. The AI takes that away from us. And we have to be careful. So I wanted to see a few things. Some have already been said. Big improvement at ITSD. We'll be glad to have the AI because we have some issues and so on. You know, the weakest thing in any security system are humans. Humans make a lot of sometimes things that they're not supposed to. You understand me? Sometimes they don't know things that they're not supposed to. Often they think they say things free. The grandmother tell you nothing is free in this world. You catch me? A sexy man shows up like Gumsy looking in that car and he promises you $1 million. And you're broke and desperate. And maybe last week Gumsy they talked to you in your meeting like this, man really look nice and promising. So you say yes. And the first thing you tell you, put in your bank account. Right? But what you have not known, you might reach halfway and say, you know, you just put in your name. You just put in your name. And the fact that they have the account, these artificial intelligence systems on their own can set up an entire army of bots using computers that don't even belong to anybody. When I say individually, you don't know who they belong to break your account. Because some of us, even if we use complicated passwords, we use compromised systems. You understand the point I'm making? So sometimes I may say, oh, my computer is secure, but I might go to my brother Gumsy computer where he has a screen, something open to capture my screen. Or his thing might be compromised by some AI that captures it. So when I log in there, it captures my information. And then guess what? Port that being done. With my account. We have to be what? Careful. Right? So, you know, you have machine language, you have all kind of thing. And the things I want to talk about, because that makes us most vulnerable, are the things like social engineering and phishing. Social engineering and phishing. As I want this, the reason I'm not getting into detail because from the beginning I was wondering who am I going to speak to and so on. But there's some later on I might touch on some of those things when we discuss. Because the average person tend to volunteer too much information. Things that you wouldn't tell me about yourself, you understand me? You put on the internet. Things that I don't know about you, you put it on the internet. I might never know you have a butterfly tattooed on your leg. But you put it on the internet. You might not know my partner Marcellus is your first cousin, and your internet and your intimate, but I see you on the internet, right? Now, when I see that and I want to get to you, I learn something about you and I ask Marcellus. Get me? And I may even come up with some nice pictures of the thing they posing with me and you. So when I do ask Marcellus now, you know, is this my close friend? So Marcellus may volunteer that information. And I'll be able to get to you. I stand resolute. Trust no one. In your own life, implement a zero trust. Implement what? A zero trust. Two people can't keep a secret. One of them has to be what? Dead. Right? So when you go online, Tell yourself you're in an adversarial environment. You get me? When you use a technology, ask yourself, how far do I want to go with this technology? What must I do and what must I not do? What information must I put in and what must I not put in? And ask yourself, extrapolate yourself from the immediate circumstance and ask yourself, how far can this thing go? Within your own mind, start to imagine all the possibilities, right? All the what? Possibilities and the consequences. Things always have consequences. Positive and what? Negative. And especially ponder on the negative consequences and how they may affect you and the people around you, including the organization that you work for. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, panel. Good morning, guests. Thank you very much. My name is Amit Adhamchandani. Amit is fine. It's a lot shorter to pronounce than the full name. Today, I'm going to look at it. I'm going to look at the impact of AI on cyber from the perspective of the insurance industry, because that is the industry that I currently work in. So what I've done is I've put together a small presentation, just with a couple of talking points, some thoughts, some considerations in terms of at least how the industry is looking at cyber, especially with AI now being such a critical, critical component within it. Just a very quick, brief background on me. Similar to Rodney, I'm a Bajan. I am in Barbados, however, but I've always been Caribbean focused and Caribbean minded. I've spent some time working in the islands as well. I've been in tech since a late teenager. Over 20 years of experience in various roles. I've had the opportunity and the pleasure of serving organizations in telco, construction, hospitality, education. I've spent some time also working in the public sector, in particular e-services. Secretary General Ronnie touched on that earlier in Barbados when during COVID, Barbados government was looking to put some services online. Technology is obviously a broad area, right? Many different areas and fields. My particular areas of interest are obviously AI, in particular generative AI and LLMs, cyber, digital transformation, and data analytics. As I mentioned earlier, I'm currently the CTO of a regional insurance company. I do a lot of part-time blogging as well for my personal projects, where I look at data across the region and imagine it and discuss it, slice and dice it in different ways. Those are a couple of the websites there. My mobile is here if anybody would like to reach out to, collaborate or take discussions further. So my perspective that I'm offering attendees today is from the private sector, in particular the insurance industry. As I said, it's a quick presentation, couple of talking points, because I know everybody's keen to get into the Q&A with the moderator. So insurance, right? We obviously collect a lot of sensitive data, right? PII, personally identifiable information, financial information, things like credit card, banking details, and depending on the type of insurer you are, there would be also a lot of medical related information, right? A lot of our systems rely heavily on third parties, right? A lot of insurers, as with any other company in other industries, they rely on cloud-based providers, the hyperscalers, i.e. Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, Google Compute's cloud platform. Big risk we see is that, when we do digital transformation in insurance, when we look at things like how do we use machine learning, AI, and automation, these tools and this transformation actually expand the attack services, the area that's available for attackers to go after. For us in particular, well, this could actually apply to any company or organization, private or public sector. Cyber incidents obviously affect reputation, trust, and solvency, right? So solvency would be a big thing for a private sector entity, as well as reputation and trust, but potentially for a public sector entity, that trust, that you could potentially lose with your citizens and other stakeholders is monumental. It's huge, right? So the previous presenters, forgive me, have touched on some of these things. So it may sound like I'm repeating it, but in some cases it's worth repeating. It's a double-edged sword, right? And that was mentioned before. From a defense point of view, we have predictive threat detection, automation, and fraud analytics. The Secretary General mentioned early on, I think it was back in 2018 or 2019, the Barbados government deployed a tool that looked at network behavior, right? So it studied, it accumulated data on the network. Over time, it built a picture of what normal looks like versus what abnormal looks like. So again, AI from a defensive posture, extremely useful. On the offense, we have, as the last presenter mentioned, where his pictures were being used, and kind of fooled his mom. You have things like deep fakes, phishing, automated malware generation. The last is very interesting because a lot of these chat GPTs and their variants, right? So you have Gemini, you have Claude, you have Meta's AI, you obviously have OpenAI's chat GPT. They build these tools with guardrails, but it's in some cases pretty easy to jailbreak these tools. And I've put scenarios into chat GPT whereby, depending on how I prompt it, it can actually give me steps in terms of how to generate some basic malware. What is even more interesting is now individuals and organizations can actually run their own LLM models, large language models, which are part of generative AI. Once they have sufficient computing power, you can actually download and install a large language model and tweak the model parameters. So you could remove all the guardrails, right? And use it for nefarious and illegal activities, right? Because the whole concept, and I want to touch on this very quickly because it's so amazing, the amount of data that a large language model has, even the smaller models, it's huge, right? It's basically, these models are trained on the entirety of human knowledge, right? So when you have a model with little to no guardrails, that is a huge advantage to a hacker or an attacker, right? So that point there kind of touches on what the previous presenters also said. It could be used for good, it could be used for bad. I like to think of it as, it's both the sword, for attacking, and it's the shield for protecting when it comes to cybersecurity. In terms of the insurance industry specifically, as that's the industry that I currently work in, some of our biggest threats are deep fakes, voice and video scams that target staff and executives and could potentially target our policyholders, right? The previous presenter mentioned some of the Singapore incidents, right? Fake Zoom call. Somebody from finance goes on the call, thinks they're seeing their boss on the call, and it's perfect. It's perfect. And money gets transferred, right? And the whole call was a total fake. It never occurred. It was never real. And that's from technology about, I can't remember offhand. I think that incident happened about at least a year ago or maybe 2 years ago. And the rate of change of technology is it's crazy, right? So you can imagine now, as the models get more sophisticated, as attackers and threat actors are able to run models on local equipment. I mean, you can probably build a small AI server for a couple $1,000 US, probably even a little bit less. The threat, the risk of the threat, the probability of the threat, and the impact of the threat when it occurs, not if it occurs, is always increasing. AI-powered phishing, hyper-personalized, fast convincing. People are studying, how are Amit's emails crafted, or how is, what language or what words or what tone does this person use in their emails? Can we duplicate that? Yes, we can. You just put it into a Gen AI or an LLM. This is a big one also, automated vulnerability scanning tools used by attackers. Many years ago, you would have attackers or hackers who were using a lot of manual steps and basic tools. Now you have tools that you can download, and in a fraction of a time, you can scan thousands of websites, fully automated, right? And a hacker can dump that information into a file for further analysis to drill down deeper into which targets make more sense from an economic and commercial point of view. Synthetic identities generated for fraudulent policies or claims, that's more unique to insurance. Data poisoning attacks against AI systems themselves, right? So you can make the AI do things that it wasn't originally set to do. So these guardrails, these protection systems now go out the window, or through the eddos, as we say in Barbados. But at the same time, right, this is a shield part of AI, at least from our perspective. We have threat intelligence platforms which are powered by AI pattern recognition, right? AI is a very big, sexy term, but what we're really thinking about is machine learning, right? And machine learning is built on pattern recognition, right? We have defense mechanisms such as anomaly detection across systems and staff and customer behavior. The Secretary General touched on that earlier when he talked about a tool like Darktrace. Other cybersecurity vendors now have incorporated those kind of technologies, right? Pattern recognition, behavior recognition, collecting and analyzing data over a period of time and looking for anomalies, looking for stuff that stands out, right? We see that also with the banks and credit cards, right? Well, hey, this purchase doesn't fit your normal credit card consumption behavior. Did you really make this purchase? Okay. From an incident response and containment point of view, AI tools are a big asset, especially for companies where they have limited IT and cybersecurity professionals, right? But they still need to be protected. So a lot of the response may now become, at least the first level response may potentially become AI automated, right? Obviously, AI enhanced identity management and access control. For us, again, in insurance and possibly in banking as well, you have the benefits of predictive fraud prevention and claims monitoring, right? So AI, from an insurer's perspective, has its strengths and its weaknesses, as with any modern technology, right? So how do we balance that? How do we balance that, right? There's innovation on one hand, and inherently there's the risk of it, right? So we're looking at protecting training data with encryption and anonymization. We look at auditing models to look for bias and make sure you can explain why is that model generating what it's saying. We guard against AI in terms of model theft and poisoning. Very important point here. This grows across all industries. Don't rely on AI alone. Look at oversight and accountability, and very importantly, human in the loop. From a regulatory and ethical consideration point of view, both NIST and ISO and other organizations, their frameworks now include AI risk management. We're seeing regulators emphasize and ask, hey, are you guys using AI in the insurance industry, right? Ethical AI, again, talks about fairness, privacy, and explainability. Preparing for the future, as I'm wrapping up, it's important to establish AI governance within cybersecurity programs, develop AI skills, cybersecurity professionals. They need to know how to use these tools. We're collaborating with other insurers and regulators. We're looking at that. Final point is very important, promoting a culture of vigilance and security awareness amongst staff, amongst stakeholders, which in our case include our staff, our customers. And that is basically it. AI will redefine both threats and defenses in insurance. The goal is always to balance innovation with resilience and trust. AI won't replace people. It'll empower, secure, and help with responsible decisions. As I said, if anybody wants to connect, there's my number. Thank you very much for your time and the opportunity to attend the panel. That is it. I shall stop sharing.
So we thank our three panelists, and I believe we can all agree that AI is here to stay, one. Two, AI can be used for good. And we can also agree that AI can be used for evil. And that represents man, if we sum it up. Not so. Man, God created man to be good. When he created man, he said it's very good. And then we know the rest. We know history. We know the fall. So the floor is opened for question, and we believe that our abled panelists will be able to answer questions from the floor. Oh, Winston. Winston has a question.
I listened to the presentations. Pretty interesting. AI and cybersecurity and the threats that are posed by AI. I note the positives. I think in the use really of AI, you have to have a lot of personal experience to use it as a tool to benefit you. In using it, there are several risks that will come. I just want to make the point that I had the opportunity to attend the World Bank Global Digital Forum in March. And two things I picked up from there. One presentation was done by a member of a CERT from Ghana in the banking sector. And they indicated that, there are a number of young persons that are actually, using AI to seek to hack into the financial systems in Ghana. Additionally, the bank itself indicated that there is need for about 4 million, or there's a shortage of 4 million cyber security experts globally, right? I had the privilege last week. I'm not too sure if Mr. Duncan was there. I heard the presentation from the person in insurance. And I want to spin it another way. And I'm not necessarily going to ask a question. But the question now of insurance, when you are affected by large attacks, how do you treat with something like that? How does government and private sector partners get together to ensure against some of these attacks? Because as you indicated, you showed that the technology can definitely put a lot of our systems at risk. I don't know if anybody wants to respond to that in terms of a discussion, but the whole matter of probably a public-private partnership as it deals. So let's look at it. Government system get attacked. I know we are dealing with a number of things to protect those systems, but the system gets attacked and there's a lot of loss. The NIS, the banking sector, and there's loss. How do we ensure against, things like that? That is what, I want to put into the discussion.
I imagine in this post-contemporary period that we're living in, where our assets become more digital. You heard the Secretary General this morning saying, the world is going cashless, right? Being a guarantor of these digital assets becomes a very challenging thing. And I would imagine countries now would have to be looking at their legal framework as to, and especially the insurance companies, because you may find some of these type of attacks may not well be captured within their current laws or legislation. And Mr. George spoke of a wide-scale attack. Because if I were to make a parallel with in recent time, because I've been personally affected, I don't want to say certain things publicly in the sense that after burial, I went to pay my insurance, and then it's only after I went to pay my insurance, the insurance company is telling me they're no longer dealing with property insurance. You understand me? Because the devastation was so wide, standing that type of a liability was like too much for them and so on. Now imagine now all of the assets that we have now in terms of what we can trade with become digital, and insurance companies now have to protect that. I don't know if our laws are yet at that point where it can cover a lot of these digital assets. Maybe they need to probably make amendments to include those and so on to be able to capture them properly and so on.
I think also, and I know Mr. Winston has been instrumental in providing training for persons throughout St. Vincent and Grenadines. I think one of the things that also has to be done is consistent training of employees to understand what to look for, what to expect, even persons who are not even in professional offices, because sometimes our parents, the older part of our population, are the most vulnerable group that normally do that. Let's say, for example, even when it comes with insurance and so forth, and it dealing with money, as simple as something where you would have seen recently where our older folks have a card to go to the bank to cash out money for themselves. And in that instance, while I'm there in the bank, I helped at least 2 elderly person trying to pin the card. And, my intrusive thought went through, and I was like, what is really preventing me from taking this? And it's my good nature. All right? The moral person you're preventing you from doing that. But these are the kind of things that have to constantly be happening for persons to constantly be training, persons to be understand the kind of information that is out there. Because as far as I see, the persons here are the persons, even in the other forums that we might have, are persons who already know the information. But the person who really needs to know the information, most of them are nowhere there. So we need to find a way to start getting our people more educated and understand as we're going on. Now we have that particular group, right? We have that particular group, even in education, that don't want nothing to do with technology. I don't know how they're existing, but they don't want nothing, period, to do, whether it's religion or personal preference, they want nothing to do with technology. And they avoid, maybe the understanding of these things that happen like AI, as if like it's a headache, it will eventually go away. So we have to start bringing them on board and start making them aware of the kind of things that is out there. That is only just one way. Training and be aware of more information that is coming our way.
Well, first of all, it's a fantastic discussion and question. We in the region, and this is something that I agree wholeheartedly with, right? As we shift more from physical assets and physical stores of value to more digital assets, again, we increase the risk of bad actors and threat actors compromising those systems, causing disruption. Now, I'm a technology expert in the insurance industry. I'm not an insurance expert working in technology, so I can't speak fully to the mechanics of it. But again, you know, insurance is about risk pooling, right? So, you know what can be done, right? Insurers will look at it as any type of other class of business in some cases, you know, home or motor or whatnot. You know, insurers will ask things like, is it worth it? Is there a large enough market to provide the coverage? You know, I certainly think, speaking as an individual, that as we go more and more digital, especially in the public sector, because the public sector touches everybody, right? You know, when you talk about going cashless, when you talk about things like digital IDs, when we put services online, when we collect data about individuals and businesses and put them in public sector systems, right? What happens, not if, the question is when, some sort of an attack or breach or loss occurs, and you know, who is going to pay for that? How are they going to be compensated? One of the things I can also say that I've observed as an individual is we also need to be realistic, you know, and take stock of our cybersecurity posture, right? Like training, following good practices, following the cybersecurity frameworks, which will reduce the risk, right? It's no different if you were to insure, let's say, a property for argument's sake. You know, you want to keep that property kept to a certain standard. You know, you don't want to be leaving flammable material and whatnot, because that exposes you unnecessarily and increases the risk of a loss. Similarly, from a digital point of view, you know, training of staff in terms of how to spot phishing attacks, how to spot social engineering attacks. You know, a lot of companies spend time on investing in equipment, firewalls, endpoint protection, so on and so forth, and they ignore the human element. So the insurance question is obviously a valid one, 100% valid one, especially as we continue becoming more and more digitized daily. But I think a lot of it should also, we need to focus on ourselves in terms of, you know, within the private and the public sector to reduce the risk of an incident or a breach or an attack. And when these things do happen, and I mentioned it before, not if they happen, it's only a matter of when, how do you reduce the impact of it? Do we have continuity plans? Do we have disaster recovery plans? You know, can our processes that are so digital, can we execute these processes with, let's face it, pen and paper if we have to, right? So continuity, you know, business continuity, and disaster recovery are big components in terms of mitigating the risk of an attack or a breach. I hope that was useful. I'm hoping it ramble.
Okay, I'm Eastlyn Bayan. No, I'm very glad that I'm here today to hear more about the AI and so. But what happened, I am very confused and also disturbed because of this AI situation. The AI seems to have turned the world into a microwave. And the very, very vulnerable people who's not able to control all that's going on are the people who are not so educated. And I have a lot of people whom I associate with that they wouldn't know what to do if something even happened. Their bank account will just go, what could we do? What could we develop in our country, especially to have people protected from, like, when people doing all these cyber crimes? because sometimes some people would not even know how to put malware or whatever block. They don't know about these things, that just ignorant people carrying around the wall in their hand, the wall as a phone, and they do all sorts of things and they don't even know the dangers sometimes. So what could we do? We need to think ahead of this game and see what we can develop to protect especially the vulnerables here in our country. How could we do that?
One thing for sure is that when there's change, and the change is unescapable, inevitable, we must change, right? Because if we do not adapt, people can get hurt, we can lose a lot, and simply put, many will be left behind. We can look at this in different ways. One is the government putting legislation in place. Yes. We can change the point of intervention where we do sorting of our education in terms of making the public aware. And even in educating our children and so on, I mentioned, for instance, that I would have gone to Singapore, I think 2023, somewhere about there. And one of the things I learned is that they have included AI and cybersecurity as subjects in their curriculum in primary school. You understand? Because we put the technology in place, we put systems in place. You look at St. Vincent and the Grenadines, so we're moving. We are in the process of the implementation of a digital transformation project. And already we can see the results of doing things differently. The people who collect their public assistance, for instance, they do so, they get it on an ATM card, right? Now, the access an ATM, they have an ATM card that is also a Visa card that would allow them to do business online and so on, right? You find sometimes I'm at a bank and somebody would come up to me and say, hey, can you please help me use this card? Now, that is a level of trust that in most cases should not be exercised in some person that you do not know, right? So what type of facilities can we put in place to help these people? We'd have to wrap our minds around that, because you might find these people might be vulnerable even to people within their own family circle. Because sometimes you give the information to John Doe in your family. When you think you have any money, they buy whatever the money, or they withdraw the money and do whatever. But it's something that we really have to think of as a people and within government as we create these systems and so on, because Simone, especially we are responsible in that area in many of the cases, being part of the implementation of the digital transformation project. How are we going to get this information to reach the least, from the least to the greatest? Because you may find it is not only people who are out there who are uneducated. You might find people who are educated, but they're not educated in this sense. And some of them may be heads of department even. Some of them may be politicians, for God's sake. You understand me? Right? Because I don't want to really mention anything, but if we look at our news over the past couple of years, we see some officials, even some officials in this country and so on. Big officials were scammed, right? So we have to take that. That's a very, very, very serious concern. We have to look as to how we get that information out there and simplify it in a way that the common man can understand it and take the necessary precaution, and make the precautionary measures in a way that they can be understood and used by the common man.
The question you asked is a question that I struggle with for a while. The reason why is because I'm now in a household where I have parents who I have to care for, and parents who have, access to a cell phone connected to the internet. And sometimes they call and they sway, they see something realistic. And I have to tell them that that is not so, right? So that question that you asked is a very important question. Now, one of the part that I can see that I have some input in that, I'm gonna put it at my Mr. George feet and my feet, where we have to start find a way to get more public awareness of what is happening, what is going on for persons who are in the vulnerable group as the elder ones. How we reach them, how we reach out to them to start get them informed as to what is happening, some of the whatnots, but it is so challenging because, as Mr. Duncan would have mentioned, you trust a nephew, you trust a niece, you trust someone to assist you, but really and truly they don't have your greatest intention in place. Now, it has to be an input from various institutions, including bringing up to speed our investigative part, which including the police, to be able to track these kind of access. It also means you might have to understand your bank statement a little bit better. You might have to be able to work with someone within these institutions, trustworthy enough. Now, during the dialogue that is happening, I happen to heard about the student who brought the work to the teacher. Now, in reality, you were not supposed to mark that child around, huh? Because the child brought his work. Now, in the past, and we bring it back to the question, in the past, the student who had an educated parent, quote unquote, had an AI at home because the parent was helping them and they were bringing the work. Now, a child who did not have that parent or have access to that individual who now use AI to bring the work, I think it's the school and the teacher responsibility to now assess that child so the child understand what they bring because you're bringing them back. So the technology was supposed to be the leveling of the playing field, right? And that come back again. So now who we need to train? We need to start training the educators to use the technology properly to assess and make sure the children are on par as well. Because if you decide to give that child a failing grade, we're going back to the only child now who could use the AI properly to bring the work properly for you still. And those are left behind. So we have some understanding that we have to bring to the playing field that all of us have to understand to really make this better, not only for our vulnerable group, but also for the children who are coming up who will be deeply impacted by these technologies. Because I really will be in a very sour spot. Because, listen, typical example. I waited years to sit with my daughter, to help her and for her to get the story that Daddy stayed up late at night to help me with my maths work when CPA came around. I didn't get that opportunity because she was able to use Gemini to take my place and did pretty good at CPA. Now, when my child is able to bring the work and she understands what she brings to you, maybe it might be in a language that she might not have currently bring. Are you going to tell me that she did not do her work? No, that is a different understanding. Or is the teacher or the person need to get that proper training understanding to make sure to check some balance in place that my child understand what is it he brings or she brings. So often so that when a child or person use AI, they really now have to understand what AI is coming because they might be interrogated, they might be assessed, or they might be evaluated. So those are the areas that we need to start looking at.
Yeah, I was thinking because so many of our seniors, because we have to remember it's about 15 years ago, people start getting the college and the university. So a lot of people would be left behind here because some of them, they don't even want to have anything to do with technology. I have a sister, an older sister, senior sister, and I have to do almost everything for her with the technology, even going and collecting whatever on card and stuff. Doesn't know anything at all. So, but they like to listen to little stories and thing on the phone. And so what if something pop up? Things pop up all the time. And they'll touch the wrong button. You know, things gone real out of whack. So could we put it like in a cell division? Like you have a cell here, cell there to train those all of at least the basics of things. It might be hard, but what if we do it like Layu, Barley, Kingston? You know, some people get some better hands on something because it really wouldn't make much sense for those people. Those people could be so ripped off.
Well, I have a question, but I also kind of got a thought from that. So, good morning, everyone. Sorry, Caleb Morris. Nice to meet all of you. So, on that note, it sounds like a bit of an issue now. It's kind of prevalent in our culture to a degree with digital communication and then, of course, digital education, where even as we look at the process of digitization in our country, we note that it's gone slower than in some other countries. Granted, still it's doing pretty well. And as we continue going, we see different innovations happening, and then we see the speed picking up. Nonetheless, we have, as was mentioned, communities and persons who would not be at the level of tech savviness to defend themselves adequately against the technological threats. That I feel like is less about the AI and more just about the technological savviness within our country. So I see those as kind of two connected but separate issues that could be addressed. Nonetheless, coming to my question. I like what Mr. Gum said when he mentioned his daughter, yes, and the way she did her work. And as someone who was recently a student, a thought that came to my head multiple times is this. As a student, one of the biggest things you learn is, or one of the biggest things highlighted to you in the school system is innovation, innovation, innovation. It's not always about the student with the highest grade, in the real world at least. It's not always about the student with the highest grade, but the student who knows how to find the fastest and most efficient and effective solution. However, in the school system that we have nowadays, in many systems, the student who's rewarded is a student who regurgitates the textbook back. They can't actually utilize the work outside of the textbook or the school system. But let's say, for example, God bless them with photographic memory. They know that textbook better than sometimes the teacher themselves, or they read ahead with the syllabus and they get, you know, all these standing honors. And the student who has the application down to a T, but doesn't know the textbook in that same way, right? They struggle because all the questions are tailored to what did page 49 part B say? So when we look at AI and the utility of it, I think in our country, one of the biggest things we have to look at implementing is a system that rewards not just the student with the high grades, but the student with the effective implementation and innovation to go and do the proper prompts, as you mentioned, to go and find whether it's white hat hacking or gray hat hacking, even things like that, jobs and opportunities there where that student can find, okay, I'm not as great with the textbook, but I know how to put 2 and 2 together and make 4.
I am going to repeat a statement that I made earlier, as I wanted to stick with us. In the absence of balance, there is chaos. We have AI. We have the students that have photographic memory. They're able to regurgitate things. I'm speaking of my personal experience now, right? Get it quickly. See, like, I've not been one who is able to remember things. I would walk down the street and everybody say, Duncan, 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 but I would see 1,000 faces, some of them I can't even remember them. And in most cases, I don't remember their names. And sometimes it's embarrassing. You understand? Well, just acknowledge and say, yeah, oh, you know, you're all right. But give me a problem. Almost any problem. And my brain is wired to solve a problem. Right? Now, we live in a world where people are trying to get by. We look at the particular example and we hear the responses from the floor and so on. And we want to be able to tell our children, nothing is wrong coming first, right? But you can come first because you put something on paper, but you're not able to do something, some form of application with it. Because when you look at knowledge, it's declarative. You understand me? It's declarative, and then you have the practical part of it. Some people get the declaration good, but they can't execute. You get me? But you don't want now, they don't have the declaration, they don't get the declaration, and neither the practical, or they devoid themselves completely of the declaration, and they're trying to practice. Imagine you have a doctor who went to school, didn't get the theories, but he's trying to do a surgery on you. And a lot of men in our societies, you give them some new technology out of a box. They haven't read the instruction. I've seen it. Women are better at doing these things. The women would go to read all the instruction in a granular way, in a way. You understand me? A man would start to put the thing together. You understand me? So we want to get everybody to understand this balanced approach to things, right? If you're going to say, well, this is my note, let the note reflect who you are in substance. And that is the problem I'm having, because you find people, if we do parallel, you might find it in a working environment, somebody might be coming to talk to, let's say, Simone, she's the head of EGOV and so on, and they can speak well. You get me? But you might find a Max in the corner up there now, he not even saying nothing too tough, but he doing all the work. You get me? And who gets promoted? The one who could come and talk. You get me? So it's to find that critical balance where, yes, we appreciate the declarative and those people who can present, but we also can appreciate those people who can show value for their work. Right?
Before we go, I would like to say, Mr. Morris, I really like that point that you shared with the idea of the first, second, third is something that while I was in the teaching, it was really, really, really annoying to work, because it is evident when it come out, like, for example, without calling names, you will see that in various events around, that the student or the school that might come out first is a school that could present on a billboard and regurgitate the information correctly. But if the school that might do bad is a school that actually built it on their own. And the question is not geared towards how did you build it, it's more geared towards how is it working, which is where most students will know. The reason why I mention this, because there's a lot of things that is happening, and if we really observe what is happening around us, you really understand how the information is being used. Now, AI is there, it is there, and you cannot avoid it. Another instance that happened with my daughter, because now I'm looking at because now in this generation, you can't say, because I say so. No, it ain't happening with this generation, and I found that out early, right? Now, we used to travel, I used to take her to Beckley on the boats and so forth, and she was very comfortable with it. But as she get more into technology and she get more into the wall of information, I notice now that I have to go there too, and I have to go there faster than her. In the sense that one time she refused to go on the ferries anymore, and I asked why. And this is because she got a blatant description of an incident that happened in China where over 200 persons died because the ferry sank, right? So then I say, okay, then I know about that ferry, but I didn't know the whole story. So I have to jump ahead of her now. And I say, okay, go and research why the ferry sank, because you only got the result. Why the ferry sank? And identify the factors in the story using the same tool, why that ferry sank. And then she went and she found out, one, it was overloaded. And I say, as you list them, let me look at Admiral. Admiral look overload to you? No, just 2 vehicles there, all right. It didn't get proper inspection. I went to the boat captain. When last you inspect? He said, we inspect last week. He said, good. And then he gave another incident. She gave another incident that it was listed on one side. Me say, look, how anybody on the boat, he can't list no how. All right? So then I am using the same tool that she is using to gather information to help her to decipher that and help her to arrive at a logical understanding that you just can't, because when you use AI with anyone, there's a difference between asking it, what is the product or what is the value of 2 plus 2, compared to asking it, what is the process and method you use to arrive at the answer 2 plus 2? Two different explanations. And we have to understand the technology, not only that, in any other place, enough to navigate that. Otherwise, not only will we have chaos, we'll have fear. And once fear step in, chaos follow behind. All right. So I really appreciate that.
Ahmed, do you have any response to Mr. Morris's intervention?
No, I think the two gentlemen there covered it perfectly. It would just be duplicating it basically. I think what he asked was good and the responses were excellent, to be quite honest.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So it's Roxanne John here, the Vice President of ISOC SVG. I want to speak on 2 points, one by Castellan and one by Petros. And Castellan spoke about trusting no one. And as I think about his intervention, I am saying the issue is that boiled down to is not really individual, it's the issue. And I'm looking at our motto for the internet society, an open and trusted internet. So the trust appears to be that of the individual, but I think it's the potential of the internet, is what it can do, is what technology has evolved to, where it can imitate, it can lose thousands of dollars, and it can cause you to spend endless time, even in court system, trying to defend yourself. And it boils down where we're talking in terms of innovation, and we want to build entrepreneurship. And we are trying to push partnership as well with individuals in the Caribbean. Now we have the issue of trust. How could you build partnership and expand business? You want to collaborate with others, but you have the issue of trust. And all because of the evolving technology. So that's something that I'm thinking about. How do we create that balance in society now? Trusting people, but at the same time, you want to innovate and you want to expand in partnership. And Petra spoke about where the AI, the whole generation of the AI, and he goes right back to jailbreak. And I remember some years when technology now start to get popular and our youth start to explore. And I remember hearing about the jailbreak, because they want to use software that the restriction on the softwares, what they will do their research and they will explore. And they start to use jailbreak for softwares, for the phone. So that's why a lot of young people are resistant to the use of Apple phone, because they feel Apple phone is a bit too restrictive because they want to jailbreak. So I remember years ago, the conversation started of innovation. We encouraging people to have local content. We encouraging our young people to come with new ideas, new technology, innovation. And this is where it got us, AI. So you are encouraging persons to innovate. Is it that we are not pursuing the other aspect of what innovation come to when it comes to policies, when it comes to what the potential out there? And I don't know how the world will look in the next 20 years. AI, it might be something else, because AI might just last for 10 years. So it is, to me, as a result of innovation, and where we are encouraging young people to use their brain, they're using their brain. That's my intervention.
And he is good with cutting, and I actually admire the way he does the work. And one of the things that he mentioned is that in his trust to do his work properly, there's a rule in carpentry that it seems like every carpenter follows. Measure twice, cut once. Somebody said, what, explain what you mean, explain what you mean, and you actually show it. You measure it twice, you mark it one time, make sure everything line up, mark it again, because you can't mend both. Right? You can't, you know, like put, you can't put it back and join it back around, right? So we measure. Sometimes the board them cut, because you cut the wrong length, that board useless. Right? So bringing that into this realm now, where not only is it difficult to trust, but you have to take time to understand the information the person you're working with, understand the information that they bring in. Does it apply to you before you make a final decision? Because you can make a decision. I am not, as Mr. Congress on the bright high flyers in my school. They say, you know, when they do school, they used to have a bell, 2 + 2. If you don't make it, what? Yeah. You said I have to process first. Yeah. And for me to process, let me think it over a couple of times. Sometimes you leave it in the back of your head and you're home, you're doing a little garden or you're walking and you're thinking. That is what I have to process. Especially when government money is involved. Right? You have to think it over because you have to answer to certain authorities. True. And make sure the decision right. So it's not only not trust anyone, but you have to trust based on facts. True. Based on information that is coming your way. You can't just come out of the blue and say, oh, the sky is green, trust me about it. No, we have to go and show me the information that they have. And once I see that consistent over a period of time, maybe on a one-off instance, you might get a blind trust. But I think it's trust that we have to give up. It ain't just gonna happen. So nothing this error that we're working with right now. Right? I just know.
I think you have the analogy. I remember attending a private school, and a teacher named Godwin Martin at Margaret Government School, Valley School. Right? And here goes at the spelling. Crazy, you know what I mean? I just spelled the word fast, I said this. We did it fast, and I made it real fast. And I didn't think get this. But on the issue of trust, you see, in security, you have to have what we call a zero trust premium. Understand? And what that means is you put in to your system the necessary precautionary measures. You get me? The necessary precautionary measures. Because we are dealing with impersonation. We are talking about man-in-the-middle attack. You get me? You're thinking of people falsifying information. Like at the beginning, when I was going to do this presentation, I say, okay, you know, I have to be conscious of the audience. Because I wanted to go down into the software and the development of it. And for instance, start with the raw material, the data set that you're using. Hello? If the data set that you're using, for instance, is poison, your results, you get me? And you may start with a clean data set, but you have to watch now who has access to that data set as they make transactions, because they may well input things in it to poison the data set. And those things can be targeted. You get me? So what they might do is not just do something to make a general change, but I would do something to affect partner purchase gums. You understand the point? So it's putting the necessary precautionary mechanisms in place to ensure that you get the expected results. Like for instance, when my friend, they were talking about the vulnerable and so on, sometimes these older people at home, they can't come out to get the monies and so on, because we still a cash-based system by and large in some sense, although you can use your cards and so on in some cases. But, you know, we use cash, physical cash. Maybe if you can put, let's say, some form of two-factor authentication mechanism in place for the old people, in a way that if I send John Tom with my card to get some money, the bank sends something with me with some simple application interface where I can press yes. You get me? And I know it's coming from the bank. then they release the money to whoever, right? It is that we are talking about. And in the corporate environment, you want to ensure, for instance, things like you have least privilege and role-based access control to reduce blast radius and compromising credentials, in the sense that a simple thing, we work in an environment. You, in your capacity, you lend Simone your credential to access something important. Hello? Then she imports whatever value. Or she writes somebody from your account demanding something. And what she's saying now, because she knows you often drop off this thing at some particular point, give so and so to give to me. Later on, she goes down and says, hey, Roxanne, say to give me the thing. You get me? So when we talk about no trust, because indeed, in order for us to build, especially in area of cybersecurity, we have to establish trust between organizations. But we have to do things like, for instance, classification of information. You get me? Right? Because we are a sovereign nation. There may be laws, for instance, dictating what we can share and what we cannot share. Because you might think, okay, I'm innocent. Hey, watch me now. Everybody who say I laugh with you, like, you know. Let me put it this way. Not everybody who laughs with you is your friend. Hello? Not everybody who laughs with you is your friend. So you might volunteer certain information or give them certain information, but partner, I'm going to tell you a secret and you alone, Mattel. Don't tell anybody. Eh? 3 days I go down the road, I'm hearing it from my partner, Justin. When I check it out, Marcellus tell him. but I never told Marcellus, I told you. You get me? So we have to put the precautionary mechanism in place to ensure that we get the expected results. Because when you look at the liability and the responsibility that go with that, they are far-reaching. You can end up in jail, government money. You can end up losing your job. Hello? You can end up with a denial of service. You understand me? You can end up with disruption in an infrastructure that brings down a whole country. Because like you said, these days, everything is online. In the United States, the water system is controlled by AI. The electrical system is controlled by what? AI. You get me? A lot of the medical operations and so on are done by what? AI. So we have to build the necessary precautionary mechanisms and put them in place to ensure that we get the expected results and not false positives. Thank you.
And just to add to that, as I get into this new role as the CEO for NCTI, you know you're going to come across and you preview and you're going to have discussion with different heads and personal information and so forth, things like that. I just want to share that without calling any name organization, I had an incident where a particular person for an organization wanted an application built to manage some information. And he came and he was, he wanted to get it going. He wanted to get it done by just to show his audience, he wanted to get it done by the day before and everything like that. Not only that, in that discussion, we had several different third-party persons who were supposed to be part of this build. We were supposed to sign some document like NDAs and those kind of things to do that. To find out, I got over 20,000 information sent to me from the guy without no documentation being thing. So I have this information and I'm waiting, I'm saying, where's the document or the contract that you send? You're supposed to say, no, you go ahead. And I have the phone unfortunately on speaker with the other persons. And so, Mr. Gomes, you have the information? I say, yes, I got received information. So then we could use it. Not under my watch. Not until certain documents are in place. Now, here's the thing. In the conversation, the man who sent the information to me stated, man, I know you. I said, okay, good. My secretary came and she overheard the conversation. Mr. Gomes, do you know this man? I only had one beer with him at 360. Is that enough trust for you to give me so much information? Man, I was able to track everybody in that information who was part of that content in Civis and the Grenadines. And you have a third party outside of the country who want to tap into that, and you are okay with me releasing that. So then I say that to say that some of the things that cause our downfall in our institutions, in our cybersecurity, is we as a human who cause the problem. And if you're not guided by certain, ethics and moral within yourself, it could just go downhill. So all of this still come back to us as the person them working, need to understand, need to be trained, need to have a level of, conscience, integrity to really see if we could steer the ship properly. Okay?
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. I'm going to wrap up this segment. We may have a couple more questions, but we are over time. We should have had this session finish around 12, and it's already 12:32, according to my watch. So what we're going to do now, if you have to say anything, I'm going to give you 10 seconds to just give your last words. If you have anything to say, so we could wrap up this session, and then we'll go to lunch. Amit, do you have any closing thoughts?
No, other than thanking you folks for allowing me to participate. I think it was a great discussion, and I hope they will continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Kaswalan?
Just want to say also thank you for allowing me to participate in this session, and to allow if the people who are listening and so on to be very aware of the fact that AI is here to stay. We need to become aware, and not only us as individuals, but the people in our families and so on, in our churches, in our community and so on. Because if at least one of us is vulnerable, all of us can be vulnerable.
And I myself want to say thank you for inviting me to be here. It was very interesting discussion as well. Maybe when you have anything in the future as well, shoot us an email with a link so that we could put it outside there, so because more people need to be part of this kind of forum.
Thank you very much, panelists. We really do appreciate the time that you took. Let's give them a... Thank you so much. We appreciate it. It was very good information, and you, from the questions and the comments you made, thank you very much. That contributed to the lively discussion.